All right, we are going to continue with more Polygon modeling here with a couple other tools that are useful. Let's delete this object. Let's start with let's start with the monkey. All right, so if you tab over to edit mode, we'll be able to play around with a couple other tools. So click off the object so nothing is selected. And over on the left-hand side with all these tools, some of the ones we've gone over are located here as well, such as loop cut and bevel and inset faces. There's one called knife. Now knife is both really useful, but also can create very strange, very strange geometry. So got to use it with caution. It's very easy to use, but it can create some weird results. So it literally cuts into the mesh in wherever you draw. So you can go from vertex to vertex. So let's start there. I'm just going to click on this left vertex, and when you click and let go and move your mouse, you've got a line that it's drawing. And I can go along to this other vertex and it will snap. And so if I click, it continues to do that until I hit enter or return. So I'm going to just do a simple one there and hit return. So now I basically created a subdivision, two triangles where there was one. So if I really wanted to sculpt something, or sorry, if I wanted to model something that was very particular coming out of this part, I could certainly create that here. Okay, so like I said, it goes vertex to vertex if you hover near it, but it can also draw a new vertex anywhere along an edge, wherever you want. So I can click one here, and I can go down here and click one here, and go down here, and again hit return to finish the knife cut. Now I've created basically 4 faces where there was just one. And then of course I can go into, let's say, face mode, go back to my selection tool, and grab that face and or scale it or whatever, and it's going to react the way that you would expect it to. That's really it for the knife tool. There's not, oh, let me do one more thing with it. The other thing you can do with it, again, can create some strange results, is you don't need to draw on edges or vertices that exist at all. You can literally just draw within the middle of a face some completely bizarre shaped thing, and when you get to the end, hit return, and you just created a really weird face. Go back to your selection tool. Now this is its own face. And you can, of course, extrude that if you wanted to, right? And it would extrude it as you expected it to, or scale, or rotate, right? Okay, so that's the knife tool. I don't use it very often, but I'm sure you can find a purpose for it. All right, the other, I'm going to tab out of here and delete this. Add a new object. Let's start very simple here with this this tool, because it's pretty powerful. So let's just add a cube, go into the tab mode. And the tool we're going to play with here is called spin. On the left toolbar, it shows up toward the bottom, kind of like a incomplete pie. Now, getting used to how this tool works is a little tricky, so let's just be very simple with it at first. So click out of that tool, and let's just go into face mode, hit 3 on your keyboard, and let's choose this top face of your cube. And let's go back into spin mode and just click it. Now, when you click spin, you've got this thing at the top of the screen on the left that has a number of steps, which we'll talk about in a moment. you've got X, Y, and Z axes. Now Z is by default selected. And if you just, you'll see this new tool that pops up, or this new icon of a circle and 2 plus signs, and it's rotating around the Z axis, right? So if I click the Y axis, it's now rotating around the Y axis, and the X axis, it's rotating around the X axis. So let's look at it on the Z axis, and if you just start to grab it, you notice, well, pretty much an undesirable result, but just so you can see what's happening, the spin tool, it is, if you open up the menu that pops up on the bottom, it shows you the number of steps, which you can now reduce, right? It's going to choose 9 was the default. You can reduce that. You can also increase or decrease the angle that the spin is happening in. Okay, so this is okay, so this is not functioning the way we would want it to, but I just want to show it to you. So I'm going to undo that. All right, and so I've got this face selected. Now, the key with learning how to use this tool is understanding what axis you want it to rotate around, and super important, where the 3D cursor is, because the axis of rotation happens around the 3D cursor. Okay, so to demonstrate that, go into X mode, X axis, and leave the 3D cursor exactly where it is, and hit 1 on your hit 3 on your number pad, so we can go into side view, orthographic view. And let's just grab this and rotate it along the X axis, and then we can get out of this mode and look at what's happening. All right, so some good and bad. The spin tool is starting to do what you want it to do, which is that it is rotating in a direction that's kind of give you almost like a ventilation shape. You get this kind of curvature, but the fact that it's rotating around the center of the object is causing the rotation to kind of have the model penetrate itself. It's sort of like well, yeah, that's exactly what's happening. Okay, so I'm going to undo that. Now, remember from before how to change where the 3D cursor is. So go into, we're going to anchor that cursor right on this right vertex so that we can make the rotation happen from here rather than from here, and that will make sense when we do it. So I'm going to hit 1 on my keyboard to get into vertex mode, and I'm going to select this one vertex. I'm going to right click on the object, and I'm going to select snap vertices cursor to selected. So the 3D cursor is going to the selected vertex. Very good. Hit 3 on your number pad again to go into side view, and now try, oops, mistake, got to select that face again. Okay, so go into face selection mode, select the face that we want, go into side view or right orthographic view, and now with that face selected and you rotate, you get the spin tool working the way it ought to work. So here's where we can change things. So before you click out of here, you can add the number of steps. You can make it quite high polygon or low intentionally. You could create something much more angular, and you could change the angle. So 150 or 180. You can get really precise here and increase the number of steps, right? So you can get this kind of shape going. Pretty neat. Now, you're gonna have to play around with this, which is what we're gonna do in class, to see all the different variations. We'll just do a couple things here. Let's reduce this to like 120 degrees. Yeah. Okay, so let's say we want it to be, we start here. So let's play around with rotating along a different axis. Let's say we want to kind of move this face now, I don't know what to say, sideways or at an angle that's not on the same axis. So we got to go through those steps again. First of all, you're going to go into selection mode here, get out of the spin tool, and I'm going to, I'm going to change, go into vertex mode, and I'm going to change it so that it rotates off of either this vertex or this vertex. It's not going to matter because we're going to be rotating it along the, around the, I guess that's going to be the y-axis, I believe. Okay, so click this vertex, right click, snap cursor to selected, go back into your face selection mode, select your face. Okay, so hopefully you're with me here. Go back to spin tool, and now we got to figure out what axis we want to rotate this. This is the wrong one. Actually, it's going to be Z, yes. So I want to rotate it this way off the Z axis. Interesting thing happens here that I want to show you. So I can play around with that so you can back, oops. Oh, super important to notice. Once you stop rotating and you start rotating again, you're creating another spin. You're adding to it. So the only way to do this with control is to spin it once like this and then go down here to the steps and things and alter it, an angle. Because if you try to grab this again, you're just creating another another step. So we have an interesting problem here, which is that the rotation is happening along the z-axis like we want, but it's not really rotating along the center of that edge in the way that I wanted it to. It's a little bit strange. So there are a few tools you can play with to create better effects, but also there's a more precise way. So first of all, if you notice this other gizmo that's in here, you can click and play around with what these do. So if I grab this red arrow, it kind of separates or gives some space between the two rotations. And if I grab the green arrow, it does the same here. If you notice down here, it's changing the center point. But it only gives you two axes. You can also change the kind of angle of rotation by messing around with this gizmo. Kind of interesting. Maybe get some results you like better, right? So you get this kind of curvature. So these can be done numerically or by holding this gizmo around. Okay, but let's go back. Okay, so it rotated off this point and on the z-axis, and it created a kind of weird effect. Let's see what happens if we create a vertex that's right in between these two, right in the center, and we rotate it off the center, and let's see if it acts the same or different. So we're going to go into our edge mode, click off of everything. We're going to click this edge only, and right click and choose subdivide. And all that's going to do is put a vertex right in between these two vertices. So now go into vertex mode, click on the one in the center, we're repeating our steps. Right click, snap vertices to cursor to selected. Okay, go back to face mode, select this face. So again, you hit 3 on your actual keyboard or click this button at the top. Let's see if that does anything different or the same. So it looks like we need to rotate this along. You can rotate it along more than one axis. So if I rotate it along the z-axis, it's still causing some issues. If I also add, you can change or add axes. I'm sorry, not that way. Before you rotate it, you can shift and select all 3 axes, and then I can rotate it. I think this is going to add another one. No, that didn't work. I think it seems like the only way to get this to act properly is to use these rotation tools within the gizmo to make this work. Somehow that doesn't seem quite right to me. But you are going to have to play with play with this tool. So let's try one more thing with a different shape so that so we can kind of see how it works with something else. So I'm going to return Shift C to put the cursor back to the world origin. Shift A. Let's use a icosphere, and let's make the subdivisions just one. Okay, so tab into edit mode. Let's turn off. Let's go into selection. So let's see what happens if we want to spin this one face with it at this kind of strange angle. So steps again, let's choose a vertex to spin from, this one. Right click, snap cursor to selected. Go into your face mode, select the face you want to spin, and let's just see what happens. So if we spin with the z-axis, it looks like that. We spin with the y-axis, it looks like this, maybe more desirable. Spin with the x-axis, all right, it looks like that. So let's go to the y-axis and kind of pull it out this way. Good. Okay, so let's play now with this numerically. If you move the X center line, you can really drastically extend the space and where the center is. So if we play with the y-axis, you'll see it's not really doing much. The z-axis is pretty drastic here. So play around with that. And then the axis that it's spinning around, you can change here. So you can do some pretty interesting things with these. Right? And really fine tune your shape. All right, so I want you to really experiment with the spin tool on your own with your own meshes, and the only way to get a feel for these things is to play around with them. So we'll tab out of there and end there.